Welcome to the PDX files. Each week we dive into the weird and the unexplained here in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. My name is Peach.
And I'm Mac.
Mac, what are we talking about today?
It's kind of hard to follow up our previous episode with a Bigfoot, but now we're going to go into the Chupacabra, El Chupacabra,
El
which
Chupacabra.
is pretty well known across Mexico, parts of South America. But even more importantly, in this episode, we're talking about Puerto Rico, which you have experience with because
I
you live
do.
there.
Yep. All right.
Let's do this thing.
Without further ado,
Some say it's an alien, others say a military experiment. It's also been called a dinosaur, a humanoid, a robot, and even the devil itself. Earning its name from its favorite prey, the goat sucker, El Chupacabras, stalks the countryside and cities alike. Chupacabras are a popular folk legend, but not everyone knows there are two different versions of the monster. Reports of El Chupacabras occur everywhere from Puerto Rico, where it actually originated, to Maine. Whenever one is sighted or found dead, the international press latches onto the story with the same intensity as the bloodsucker itself. Some believe it is a freak of nature. Others are convinced it was a culmination of mass hysteria. But it's said to be a monster that doesn't normally hunt humans. So why are we so afraid of it?
why are we so afraid of it?
I'm not afraid of it. I actually disagree. I'm not afraid. I think I'm more like intrigued by the idea of it. And
Fascinated.
I'm gonna have to look this up. Maybe we'll do kind of a thing later on about some of these topics that we're covering. But Maine,
Yeah, I did not
in
know
the
about that.
U.S., where the fuck? Why would it be up there? That's it's insane. That's the last place I'd expect to see a chupacabra. But it is something that for the folks who live down in those areas, it's a myth, it's a legend. It's like the real deal. It's not like you have to convince anybody.
Yeah, it's I definitely heard about it while I was living in the PR a long time ago, and it's interesting because there's a version of that monster in Philippine lore, which of course I can't think
Filipino
of right
lore.
now.
Oh my
Eh?
gosh. Wow. And you
In
said
Philippine
Filipino?
lore, there's a version of a monster like that.
Yeah,
But obviously we did not call it chupacabra. I need to do some research. I'm
that's
not ready, and
awesome.
maybe we do an episode on Philippine monsters in the future.
I definitely think we're going to be doing that.
All
Yes.
right. But let me find our spot in the video here and proceed.
Reports of El Chupacabras are actually relatively recent as monsters go. It's not your typical classic monster, this one is modern. They first appeared in 1995 in the Puerto Rican town of Canovanas. There were reports of the deaths of
Do you know where
dozens
that
of
is?
farm animals, whose blood had apparently been sucked dry by small perforations in the neck and abdomen. It caused immediate panic. No animal was safe. Ducks, rabbits, chickens, pigs, and yes, goats were all said to have been killed by a grotesque creature. In Puerto Rico, chupacabras are said to be 3 to 5 feet tall, with wings like a bat, fangs, a hunched back, large black or red eyes, and covered with either scales or quills. Some reports
So
include
everybody's
tiny
toddler.
arms and the ability to jump great distances. Others claim it has spikes along its back and a long tongue. For the residents of Canovanas in 1995, this terrifying monster was a real threat. Their livestock were dying, and people were so scared that guards were positioned to protect what animals were left, children were escorted to school, and some families even abandoned their homes. As local and national papers picked up the story, reports increased across the island. By April 1996, more than 2,000 animals had fallen victim to El Chupacabras. At different times, Puerto Rico housed U.S. military personnel. This includes Fort Buchanan, located less than 40 minutes from Canovanas.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's scary for the people who are living there, right? I mean, I've never been to Puerto Rico. I don't know about how the countryside is there, but I imagine that something like that, if it was a human being that started it, it could turn into a legend.
Yeah.
But the fact that it really detailed in its description is weird. It's not something. It's like Peter Dinklage getting into a chupacabra outfit and doing all this kind of stuff. It could actually be something, but I don't know. I mean, you know more about this country than I, or about this island than I do.
Yeah. First of all, it's a small island, right? It's
Yeah.
only like 300 square mile, I think. if I remember the measurement, and Canovanas is on the north, and and it's there's a rainforest in the island Puerto Rico, but then there's really a lot of like lowland villages that are, that's still pretty pretty green. There's the cities and the accumulation of buildings are really in just kind of certain parts of the island.
Is it pretty
So
flat there, or are there any mountainous?
along the shoreline for sure, but and the rainforest is kind of towards the center, and towards the south, but um yeah, I mean, for something like this, especially as recent as 1995,
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting, and I don't know if they're going to talk about it in the later in the video, but being close to the military base, I don't know if there's going to be a tie in there, but
I didn't even know
um,
there was a military base there. That's kind of crazy.
there's actually an island. Gosh, I think there's Vieques and Culebra are on the northeast. They're two separate islands, and I think Vieques used to be an Air Force base.
Hmm.
I'm blanking on the details now, and in fact, I might have um, just provided some anachronistic information there. However, the Chupacabra, like I said, I mean, it's kind of, it was said in jest, like, because I mean, I think it was like over my first 2 weeks in Puerto Rico, one
Yeah.
of the people said, "Oh, be careful of this Chupacabra," something like that. And I'm like,
So
okay.
it isn't something that people talk about, but it's kind of like part of
It,
their
in a
their
funny,
lore, I guess.
in a
Yeah,
funny lore kind of way, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
well,
I mean, that's how some of these things start, right? So
yeah, let's continue. And I'm actually gonna have to go back a little bit because I missed my cue.
At different
fair
times,
enough.
Puerto Rico housed U.S. military personnel. This includes Fort Buchanan, located less than 40 minutes from
Mm.
Canovanas. Rumors swirled that El Chupacabras was an escaped military experiment. This is where things get
That's
more
what.
There we
interesting
Okay.
go. There we go.
and political. Mayor Jose Ramon Chimo Soto, who was up for re-election in 1996, decided to take
Chemo.
matters into his own hands and protect the people and animals of his town with a safari. In October 1995, Soto organized 200 people, including armed cops, and set out to catch the monster. Dude literally dragged a goat around in a cage and carried a large crucifix. The press dubbed him Chemo Jones. Soto also loved to give interviews, and when the international English-speaking press heard of the Chupacabras in late 1995, his quotes appeared in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and this fun one. Soto wasn't the only politician to address El
Yay.
Chupacabras. The Puerto Rican government decided to step in. They were not only concerned for their people and their livelihoods, they also recognized the negative impact the monster could have on tourism.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. That whole political piece of this is like,
Yeah.
this dude Chemo Jones was going out there with like all sorts of crazy stuff. And yeah, I mean, if I would have known about that, and I at like putting myself back at that time, and I was thinking, "Oh, I'm going to go to Puerto Rico, it's beautiful," and then I hearing about that, I was like, yeah, maybe I'll go somewhere else.
Also, I'm
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Chemo. I think she's reading it like an
Oh, it's
American
Chamo.
word.
Yeah,
I'm
because
I'm pretty
chemo
sure
didn't
it's
make any sense.
like what is it, like short for
She's
chemotherapy. No, I'm pretty sure
chemotherapy. Yeah, that's a weird
it's
nickname.
Chemo.
Yeah. So you have heard of that guy then?
No, I've not heard of that guy. And again, I think like
I thought maybe when
my
you were there, you might have heard of him, but yeah.
yeah, it's more about like I said, whenever the chupacabra was mentioned, it was like in jest. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, don't stay out too late. You get hit by the chupacabra.
That's kind
And
of cool. I love that.
what was that?
That's kind of cool. I think it's really interesting how that has become. I mean, because I didn't know it originated in Puerto Rico. I thought it was in Mexico is where it originated, but
Yeah,
apparently not, right?
right.
At
Right,
least
yeah.
according to this video.
I mean, according to this video, yeah. I don't know. I mean, and again, I did not know. I did not obviously look into it as much. Otherwise, I probably would have heard that little tidbit about, it potentially, being a government
A
military
military
experiment gone
experiment.
wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I could see that. I mean, you got a U.S. military base there. and then you have some weird creature out there all of a sudden, like sucking the blood of goats and all that kind of shit. I mean, I don't know. uh, but it is a kind of, even if it's not real, it's an interesting kind of like look at how mass hysteria can happen.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's continue here.
El Chupacabras became a pop culture phenomenon. For some Puerto Ricans, the monster became an anti-hero, a monstrous symbol for their own otherness in relation to the United States. By the end of 1995, thousands of shirts were printed with illustrations of chupacabras. It inspired 3 songs, and a cocktail. In the early 2000s, a different kind of chupacabra emerged. Reports from Mexico and the southwestern United States described El Chupacabras as a hairless, gaunt animal walking on 4 legs, a vast departure from the original Puerto Rican monster. Unlike the Puerto Rican version, actual corpses have been found. Upon examination, these canine-looking creatures always turn out to be coyotes, dogs, or raccoons with genetic abnormalities or victims of
How do raccoons always get involved?
Well, yeah, because I think they're rummagers, they're scavengers, and they get into people's faces, and
they're just mean. They look really cute at first, but if you've seen some of the memes, and they're like, excellent, yes,
yeah, like Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, well, he's more of a turtle, I guess, than a raccoon. But I mean, that is kind of interesting, how they kind of branched out into a different legend, right? I mean, you have the original, kind of the OG, which is more of like a demon or a military experiment kind of deal, and then you see like weird ass dogs, like it's showing there that get mange. But still, there's some unexplained things that happen even in those areas. I don't think it's just it can't be just mangy dogs or raccoons. I don't know. Maybe it is.
I mean, who knows? I mean, again, it's like I'm skeptical of when people find proof of that creature, just because it's almost always proven to be something else.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I just like, if I happen upon an article of it, whatever, on Google or whatnot, I would probably skip it.
Yeah, and I think that the where it originated in Puerto Rico, that's a much more compelling chupacabra to me. That one is really interesting. The other ones probably are just like nasty ass dogs that just got sort of left out. But I don't know. I mean, different things can happen. But let's see what else this gal has to say.
Yeah, anything's possible for sure. And I also would like to put a little caveat to what I said earlier about Philippine folklore. Um, Again, I'm gonna need to do some more digging on my part, because I'm trying to figure out now whether I started to, conflate the chupacabra as being part of Filipino folklore while I was living in Puerto Rico. So,
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that episode, because that'll be one that you prepare and I'm going to react to. I'm looking
that
forward
sounds
to
fair.
reacting to that one. Hell
That
yeah.
sounds fair. All right, we'll continue here.
Status of Puerto Rico helped to shape the El Chupacabra's myth. It became a symbol of cultural otherness, and the mystery surrounding its origin emphasized how those in power can control information. One thing both myths have in common is that real animals are actually dying. For farmers and rural citizens, the threat to their livelihoods is a huge, very real problem. Monster mythologies are typically thought of as ancient tales told long ago, but El Chupacabras shows us that these stories can arise today. They highlight our fascination with trying to explain the unexplained and allow us to tell our cultural histories by merging fact and fiction.
Honestly, that's the most fascinating part of it, is the cultural impact, of trying to explain why things are happening. It's the unknown is scary for everybody. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you live, and coming up with the reasons why, and something you could point at as for why it's happening. Um, that's fascinating to me. I think that last part there, where the chupacabra is real or not, that it makes a lot of sense. What kind of how she ended it up.
Yeah, and I think with everything that cannot be explained, and especially when you've got a people a group of people who already have rich folklore as part of
Yeah,
their,
right.
part of their culture. It's easy to kind of concoct that as the explanation versus anything that's, more scientific.
And I would say that would be more comforting to me than it would be like, oh my God, there's this disease on the island that's killing animals,
Well,
right?
yeah, it's interesting that, with everything that we've been talking about here on this channel regarding aliens, it's interesting that aliens weren't, one of the
As maybe a reason.
possibilities. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah,
maybe
maybe they
maybe
were,
I'm
but
projecting.
yeah, no, I think that I think there's a lot more physical evidence with aliens, though. That's the thing. It's like
Uh,
with this, there's not a lot of evidence to really back up any of the claims, and it seems to me more likely a myth and a legend. Although you could say the same thing about UFOs, UAPs, but again, I think there's more evidence to suggest that aliens might be more real than the chupacabra. But I love it that again going back to Chimo Jones, or that it says how you pronounce it. That's hilarious. I would like to see that Trump go out there and do kind of the same thing with his little crucifix and a little goat to try to capture the chupacabra. Would be like gold TV. I'd love to see that.
well, and I think I just backed myself into a corner regarding Filipino folklore. So we're definitely gonna have to,
It's happening.
we'll definitely have to explore that, especially, this episode and the previous one definitely delved into the world of the cryptids,
Mm.
as I recently learned that phrase, and we'll continue that on this channel. Well, if you enjoyed this content, please give it a like and share it across your socials to help get the word out about our show. If you hadn't already done so, please subscribe. And on YouTube, hit that notification bell to make sure you don't miss out on future episodes. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.